Welcome back, 12:25. I'm here just for another 35 minutes. Let's talk about gender distress. Is that something that affects you? Did you wake up this morning feeling distressed about your gender, I wonder? Well, before we go on, let's just remind you that according to anyone with common sense, there are two genders, male and female. Donald Trump agrees. He's made that a matter of an executive order. So as the leader of the free world, I guess we should take notice, shouldn't we? But not everybody is. It does seem that according to a study of NHS records, of course, what else? Kids are now 50 times more likely to suffer from gender distress than a decade ago. 1 in 1,200 kids in 2021, the latest figures, said they experienced turmoil over their biological sex by the age of 18. That compared to just 1 in every 60,000 in 2011. I wonder what's changed. Well, let's ask someone, shall we? Let's speak to Kelly J. Keane, who's founder of Let Women Speak. And I'm going to let you speak, Kelly J. Keane. What is going on here? This is nonsense, isn't it?
It is absolute nonsense. I think the first issue is the word gender, and it doesn't really mean anything. And we've begun to use it like in law, legislation. We have something called the Gender Recognition Act, which is a legal fiction, which means a man can say he's a woman and a woman can say he's a man, and we all have to pretend that that's actually a thing. And when it comes to kids, I just think, I wonder if the sort of the parent advice not to use the word no has somehow coincided with this idea.
Or just to tell your kids, look, you're being utterly ridiculous, snap out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you know, kids have lots of fantasies, and we as adults usually just pay them no attention whatsoever, which I think is what we should return to. You know, we had the Cass review recently, and she used the term gender distress, and I think I think that was a gutless move. But also, why is the NHS recording this? Like, what is even what they would call gender distress?
Well, and why do they think they need to? And also, I have to say, I mean, you would imagine that the question they are asking, in order to perhaps get a specific answer, would be rather loaded, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And also, look, you're not supposed to be happy all the time. That isn't how life shapes out. You're not supposed to be sort of skipping down the street with a big fat smile on your face all the time. Life can be quite difficult. Sometimes you feel a bit rubbish. I mean, I woke up this morning and I'm still a 50-year-old woman. I mean, that was ultimately distressing.
And you didn't fancy identifying as anything else today?
Pardon?
You didn't fancy identifying as anything else today? I mean, let me give you an example. I know of a school in Essex where there are children that identify as a thing called a furry. Do you know what that is?
Yes, it's, for want of a better description, it is a community of kind of slightly misfit children.
Slightly.
So very predatory men. And
it's basically those children that have identified or decided to identify as a cat.
Yeah, but I think parents should be forewarned. It sounds silly and funny, but there are conventions, and I really do think if your child is at all involved in furries, then you have to be very mindful of who they're talking to online and who they're meeting, because it really is a bit of a boundaryless. You
think there's something more sinister going on as an undercurrent?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, look, on the surface, isn't it hilarious that your child wants to wear a cat and some cat tail and ears? But
yeah, hilarious. I think, look, we have to question the mental health of these children, and also those around them, parents and teachers, that by way of encouragement almost are enabling this, so that the next child thinks it's normal behaviour, and therefore the next child. And all of a sudden, you've got a class of children, 11, 12, 13 years old, that are identifying as nothing short of a menagerie of different animals, genders and types. I mean, we've got to stop this. I mean, as is happening in the US now, whereby Donald Trump has said, I'm mandating across the public sector and elsewhere that there are only two genders. We have to call a stop to this, because by not calling a stop to it, effectively we are enabling it and empowering it further.
Yeah, well, fortunately, all the way through his executive order, he says two sexes, which I think is, and then he goes to define exactly what male and female sex is, and I'm delighted, and you'll see the words adult human female sat behind me, which was all over the executive order, so I'm ecstatic. But like you mentioned the word mental health, and I think that's also significant that we have started talking to very small children about their mental health as if it's normal to sort of pathologize things and give it labels. And I think all of that needs to go. Like, my son had a mental health week when he was at primary school. Quite frankly, I just think children need to be...
Well, but yeah, clearly, because Kelly J, what happens then at the end of that week? Lots of kids start identifying as having mental health because it's been put in their heads. You know, if you've got 25% of your class that identify as a gender other than that which they were born with, then more are encouraged to do so. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. It's so obvious that this is becoming an epidemic of nonsense, but it's enabled by woke parents, some of whom actually, it would seem to me, want to become famous on TikTok and Instagram through the manipulation of their child's own gender. So you've got a combination of that and the weak-willedness of the authorities, the enabling of this absolute abject nonsense. I'm not quite sure where it ends, really.
Well, I think it ends with strong leadership, and I certainly don't feel that we've got that. But it's absolutely rife through the teaching unions. It's rife through the universities that train teachers. Obviously, the cheaper teachers are the newly qualified, so they'll have been indoctrinated into this nonsense. There's this thing about being friends with pupils in school as opposed to teaching them. You know, it's a big fat amount of rot. But I think we'll watch America over the next year very carefully, and we'll see that this thing, because it's built upon the sand, will really quickly disappear.
Well, let's hope it rubs off. I'm not sure it will on the government we have currently. Let's talk about Megyn Kelly unleashing on trans Emilia Perez star Carla Sofia Gascon. So this is the Oscars nominations that were announced yesterday. So I'm just trying to get my head around this. So we've got a film about someone where the actor is a trans actress, but is a man, playing a trans actress that is also a man, but has now been nominated for Best Actress, even though they're a man. I think that's right. The producer's nodding. Hopefully I've got that right. This again is all getting very confusing, isn't it? What do you make of this? And Megyn Kelly, I mean, hilariously actually, has absolutely lambasted this nomination, because I would imagine that the Oscar for Best Actress should go to, what's that word? A woman.
I think they've got the nominations they deserve, actually, and I really you know, I think it might be a little bit of a slight towards Donald Trump being elected that Hollywood has responded like this. But all those actresses that are the women that are up for this award, if they lose to that man and they say nothing about it, then I think maybe Hollywood deserves it.
But you know what will happen? This will be televised, of course, in due course. And you know, the Angelina Jolies of this world will sit there politely clapping. You know, isn't it fantastic that he just got Best Actress? Or obviously she'll say she, I'm saying he, you're saying he. Yeah. They're enabling it. I mean, how far out of touch can Hollywood get?
Well, I think they've proven... I think the pandemic really did put a big stake through the heart of Hollywood. I think we all sort of began to see behind the curtain, and this is just a further extension of it. But like I said, look, what's happened in America with this executive order, with this, there are only two sexes, and then Hollywood doing this, I think it's just got the ability to peak the rest of America, which means the rest of America will wake up to this nonsense, and those that have been silent for so long, frightened to speak, will actually be able to speak about it. So I think this actually is really good for my side of the argument, which is men can't be women. Yeah. But it's just perfect.
But again, it's enablement. And just to clarify, and just to make this very, very clear, so Carla Sofia Gascon, that masquerades as a woman and is potentially now going to become Best Actress, and of course she's going to win, isn't she? He, is really Carlos Gascon. So let's be very, very clear. Carlos Gascon, as a man, is about to win, potentially, the Oscar for Best Actress. Can you imagine if we were having this conversation 10 or 15 years ago, how preposterous that would sound? And everyone would be laughing at us now, saying that could never happen, Kelly J.
Yeah, I know, it is nuts. But you had Caitlyn Jenner, or Bruce Jenner, years ago winning Woman of the Year. I think he called himself a woman for about 6 months, and he won the Glamour Woman of the Year. So, you know, maybe this is the final throes of just a nonsensical ideology that we all know
Well, I hope so. And look, while we're talking about it, a quick hat tip to the LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association. You won't know this, I'm afraid, Kelly J, but my daughter is a paddle player. She's 15 years old. She does very, very well, by the way. She's #2 junior in Britain. But she, in an open tournament a few months ago, had to play a number of players, including a trans woman, in other words, a man. And guess what happened? Actually, my daughter and her partner won the first set because the trans player played like a woman. Because they were losing in the second set, guess what? That man, masquerading as a woman, started playing like a man and beat my 15-year-old daughter. But the LTA have now, in a kind of a rare moment of common sense, have now banned trans players. It's now biological men will play as men, biological women will play as women. We need a bit more of that, don't we?
Yeah, fancy that. Fancy that even being something we have to talk about. Oh, you know, as if congratulating them. But I do, because I think in this current climate, you know, it's very easy just to go along and really not care about girls in girls' sports whatsoever. So well done to them. But it's a shame that it's just not right across.
But the alternative is the eradication of the movement for equality for women that has been fought for the last 100 years. I mean, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, I started a political party called Party of Women, and the one thing we want to do is get rid of this GRA, get rid of the Gender Recognition Act, get rid of Gender Identity out of the Equality Act. In fact, I'd like to scrap the entire Equality Act and bring back some robust discrimination, but that's...
Do you think Labour are going to make it worse? I mean, just to make a political point, I mean, you know, we saw what happened in Scotland where, you know, you'd have male rapists that then transition to women and end up in women's prisons. And that, of course, was effectively the end of Nicola Sturgeon's career, actually, thankfully. Yeah. Do you see the Labour government here, because of their left-leaning wokeism, falling on the same sword, potentially? No pun intended.
Yeah, look, I think Labour are so badly in cahoots with Davos, and Davos had this sort of global idea of something called sexual orientation and gender identity, which wipes out any rights that you have as a male or female. So I think Labour are going to really go hell for leather on this, and I think it's going to be horrendous. I think come 4 years, I think this country might be unrecognisable when it comes to women's rights.
Yeah, well, let's hope it's not too irreconcilable. Kelly J. Keane, founder of Let Women Speak, as ever, thank you very much for your very, very sensible approach to this particular subject. Thanks very much.